Welcome to another Top 5 with Kris 05. Today I'm gonna give you the best decks in Hearthstone right now, before the new mini set launches, which should be happening around the 21st of January. We're gonna see what are the current best decks from Diamond 5 to Legend, talk about their mulligans and win rates, as well as some general tips so you know how to play with those decks, as well as what to expect when you face them. But I'm also gonna go over all of the other working archetypes for each individual class, so stick around to the end. And if you enjoy the content, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget, you can also hire me for some Hearthstone coaching, and you can be sure I'll do my best to make you a better Hearthstone player. Now, let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The first deck on the list is gonna be Cycle Rogue, which is kinda interesting because I didn't expect this to be performing as well from Diamond 5 to Legend, but honestly, nowadays the deck is simply just not that hard to play anymore. You're no longer needing to have a great understanding of a deck like this in order to be winning a lot, because without having to worry about Sonya, the skill cap for this deck is kinda close to the ground. The deck is not as punishing, you still need to be pretty efficient about it, but it's definitely a lot more Diamond 5 to Legend friendly, so climbing shouldn't be an issue. This is currently the best performing deck from Diamond 5 to Legend at least, and the only difference from the standard deck is we have a Deafen instead of things like Glacial Shard or Speaker Stomper or Cult Neophyte. Oh, actually we do have also a Cult Neophyte in here, which begs the question, what did we remove for it? And from what I see, we actually don't have Ceaseless Expanse, which does work amazingly well if you gotta be completely honest, at least from top 100 Legend perspective, but maybe it's a little bit too slow. Anyway, this is the deck. I do have a pretty good guide about it, some coaching gameplay with it from not too long ago, so you can definitely check that one out if you really want to know what you want to be doing with this deck. But all around, in the first few turns, you want to be drawing as much as you can. On turn 1, you either go dig for treasure or gear shift. On turn 2, you usually a quick pick or play the Moonstone Mauler, because if you actually draw asteroids, those draws a second time for you, and that does help you drop the Playhouse Giants a lot quicker. And on turn 3, you usually do something like Ethereal Oracle, backstab something for the opponent, and Shadow Step so you can do it again. Turn 4 also looks kind of the same, with another Ethereal Oracle, another spell, another Shadow Step preferably, and on turn 5 you start blasting with Playhouse Giants, and you bounce them with Breakdance and get to play them again, and if everything went according to plan, you could have a turn 5, 32 worth of stats on the board. And you leave the opponent wondering, is he playing wild? On turn 6, Incendius usually drops amazingly well for you, and on turn 7 you could Ethereal Oracle, draw a bunch of stuff, including your asteroids, including Incendius, and that's usually enough for most opponents. The main idea of the deck is you do a good amount of damage with the Giants, and you finish off the opponent with chip damage through the Incendius, through the asteroids, stuff like that. And that's the general gist of it, but if you want to learn more about it, you can definitely check out my guide. Matchup-wise, here's what we have here, and on these ranks, other Cycle Rogues could be a problem, Dungar Druids, Control Warriors, and other Cycle Rogues would be a problem because, like I said, the standard variation of the deck does run Speaker Stomper, and that is quite the counter for you, even though you also have slight counters for that with the help of Cult Neophyte. Mulligan-wise, here's what it looks like. Quick Pick, Dig for Treasure, Ethereal Oracle, and Gear Shift I'd say are MVPs, even though Gear Shift is a little bit on the questionable side, because if you already have some of the good cards, you probably don't want a Gear Shift on one, but it's still something to consider. Prep is also a good keep, especially with Ethereal Oracle, and it's also a consideration when you have a dubious purchases, because those two work really well on turn 2. The Shadow Step I'd say is always a key for your Ethereal Oracle if you already have it, but don't forget, if you want to trigger the spell burst for Ethereal Oracle, you cannot do it with the Shadow Step on the Ethereal Oracle, because the spell burst resolves after the spell gets cast, and with Shadow Step, the dude is not going to be on the board anymore, so don't get baited into thinking you can actually trigger him like that. The rest probably never keeps. And as for on the coin, again, plenty of the same stuff. So definitely mulligan accordingly. Moonstone Mauler I'd say is pretty good in both cases, but if you already have a quick pick, you probably don't want to be keeping it. For other good rogue decks, we can also see Spellburst Rogue doing amazingly well for the last 7 days for Diamond to Legend, but it's definitely not a deck for everybody. I myself find that deck very hard to actually pilot, even though I did try to give you a guide about it, but it's more of a general idea of what you should be expecting of the deck than to actually learn how to really play it, because the deck is definitely something else if you really push it to the max. Plenty of different Cycle Rogues out there. Weapon Rogue is also pretty much up there, and it's pretty cheap, like it literally has no legendaries, so it's kind of a, I I don't know, it's exactly a rock, paper, scissors kind of deck, like you stomp on people and you get stomped by others, so it is a very polarizing deck, but in Top Legend it does work well because it really works great against Cycle Rogues, and that's mostly what you're seeing. And you gotta scroll a lot to actually see anything different from that. I have been seeing some Drilly Rogues in Top Legend lately, Mech Rogue is playable but not really, and there are other variations of Rogues out there, but if you really want to be climbing, Spell Burst and Cycle would be the way to go. On the number 2 spot we have another amazing deck, but it's on the other end of the spectrum, for the skill cap at least. Well, not really, like I said, Cycle is a lot easier now, but whatever. Here we have Handbuff Pally, which has been a pretty easy deck to be hitting easy legend with. It's definitely not very hard to play, very close to optimally with it. And yeah, the deck just does way too much for way too little. You have tons of stats, you have tons of burst, tons of healing, you name it, it has it. Well, it doesn't have spells, so don't name spells, I guess. But yeah, this is just another iteration of Handbuff Pally. Honestly, the deck is pretty much perfect 28, and you get to fit in whatever you're missing, like a Cult Neophyte, like a Festival Security, like a Razor Scale. Those would be the free flex picks here for you if you want to be slapping some flavor of your own in it. But all around, the deck is pretty easy to play. I have plenty of guides with it, plenty of coachings videos with it, so if you want to really know how to play it, definitely go ahead and check those one out. Matchup wise, here's what we can see. Swarm Shaman is a new great deck that is actually doing well against these, so there's something. Dawn Druid a little bit on the negative, but all around climbing shouldn't be an issue. I'd say we can check a similar deck with a lot bigger sample size. Again, the gist is the same, but we can see a lot more matchups. And here Dungar Druid is going to be great against you. Control Death Knight apparently. The Zarimi Priest apparently is also pretty strong against you. But as you can see, you're going to be great against rogues, so that's pretty nice. Mulligan West, here's what we have. Not exactly rocket science. You're trying to get the weapon. You're trying to get a good one drop like a Drone Deconstructor. Grim Street is fine. Gold Banner is also pretty good. Grim Street is actually not that hot, and I do believe it's not that hot. A lot of people keep it, but as you can see, the win rate for it is actually pretty low. Like, look at this, it's bottom 5, but it's also top 5 as a kept card, so this is quite a discrepancy. I'd say Grim Street is kind of a bait unless you have a pretty good hand. Like, if you already have a 1, 2, 3, yeah, it's an okay turn 2, but on turn 2 you want to usually be playing Instrument Tech. If you already have the weapon, I guess you could keep him as well, but I don't know. Keep him with a grain of salt. It's really not that amazing of a card. Gold Banner is great, Musclotron is fine, and don't get baited always forging this guy. A lot of the time you just tempo him on free without forging, and that would be far better for you for your tempo. And depending on the matchup, things like Cult Neophyte and Razor Scale might also make sense. Like if you're against the Rogue, Razor Scale is really nice. Just don't forget it's a double side effect, so you're also not going to be playing cheap stuff. And Festival Security is a pretty interesting card as well. If you're against things like Hunters, that would be pretty nice. Works amazing against Shamans too, so you can really botch their tokeny strategies. On the coin, again, much of the same stuff, so definitely mulligan accordingly. The Ziliax here is the Twin Module plus Power Module, so if you get above this guy and coin him on turn 5, it could be absolutely broken. For other good Pally decks, we can also see some Lionessa Libram Pallies at the top, straight up Taurus Pallies as well. The sample size is a lot smaller here. I think this is the one I'm showing you, or close to it. Yeah, the Taurus Pallies are definitely a lot harder to really pull the most out of that deck. It's not as easy as it looks, and we have a lot of iterations of it. Same with the Handbuff Pallies. There's still Pipsy Pally apparently. It's still basically a Taurus Pally with some Pipsy package in it. Mining Pally is a Handbuff Pally with the mining package. Straight up Libram Pally is also up there, again with some Lionessa action, because those fit well together. So plenty of different Pally lists, but obviously some work better than others. On the number 3 spot, we have this new Swarm Shaman I just showed you a few days ago, and the deck is really strong. Like, I've helped 2 people hit Legend with this thing for the past 3 days, so that says a lot. And also the stats support it very well. We can see this thing is doing tremendously well from Diamond 5 to Legend. Haven't seen that much stats in top 1000 for it, but it's also showing up there, here and there. And yeah, the deck is pretty nice, pretty fun to play. It's nice and quick, and it kind of feels like a canned Pally, friendly, but not really. It's a little bit faster, a little bit weirder. It has some weapon action going, and you get to do some pretty quick backstage bouncers, usually as 5, 6, 6, 7 as soon as turn 3 or 4, which can be pretty nice. We still have some cult neophytes, so you play around all them spell heavy decks. And Observer of Mysteries also help you give negative tempo for the opponent, which can be pretty nice. Again, I do have a guide about this deck, like, who would have guessed it? I'm doing guides for the best decks. Shocking, I know. I'm not telling you these decks are the best because I have guides for it. I basically have guides for right about anything meta. So yeah, definitely check the guide for this one. It's literally like almost 15 minutes because I really went into detail what gets drawn from what buffs what, all that kind of stuff. So definitely give it a check. But I can tell you the deck is pretty pleasant to play, and you're gonna be winning a lot with it. Matchup wise, again, here's what we have, and everything's green except for the mirror, so I guess depending on the variation of the deck, you might be a little bit less favored, but honestly, it's kind of close to 50, so as it should, it's a mirror. Mulligan-wise, here's what we have. Going first, you want to be curving out well, but Turbulus is always going to be a keep no matter what. Scarab, one of your good 1-drops is fine. Party Animal can be great, especially if you have a minion-heavy hand. Gorgon Zormo is usually great. Zilly can be amazing. Greedy Partner can also be great, but try to have another 2-drop for it, because it's not going to feel amazing dropping it just on turn 2. Trusty would only be a keep if you already have a good 1-drop you're expecting to stick. Glacial is not that bad, because if turn 1 you play Glacial into turn 2 Trusty, that gives you a Turbulus for free, because that's the only elemental you have, so that can be kind of cool. And the rest probably not so keepable, even though things change depending on if you already have a Greedy Partner or not. And if you're curving out, I'd say even Backstage Bouncer could be amazing. And on the coin, again, much of the same stuff. I'd say Backstage is even more keepable here, because on turn 3 this thing is really going to be blasting, even though you'd much rather get a Turbulus nice and quick, but you're not always going to get Turbulus now, would you? For other good Shami decks, obviously Asteroid Shaman is pretty much up there as well, but you can see plenty of Swarm Shamans up there. The Asteroid is also represented somewhat in the top percentile at least. We can also see Battlecry Shaman, which is an interesting new Dungar list with Nebula and stuff. Pirate Shaman is still playable, definitely, with still pretty decent stats, not as broken as it used to be, but still definitely can climb to Legend. And I've even seen some Highlander Shamans here and there, but not so much, I guess. Here's another Battlecry Shaman. Nature Shaman is actually doing great in top Legend, at least for Norwis, but then again, when hasn't it? So again, plenty of different things to be choosing for with Shaman. On the number 4 spot, Elemental Mage is still pretty strong, pretty cheap, pretty worth playing. The only legendary in here is still Saroon. We have Azurite Giant, which I've come to learn is actually a card you can get through completing achievements, so it's basically free. And yeah, the deck is far from rocket science still. Really no need to talk about it too much. Again, plenty of guides, plenty of gameplays, plenty of everything for it. If you really want to learn how to play it, it's really not that hard. Like, the deck kind of plays itself, but there are still a few little intricacies here and there you could be thinking about, so you could check out my guides about it. Let's just move on to the matchups, see if we have some new things to be worrying about. Corpsicle Death Knight apparently is on the negative for you. Hand Warlock and Cyclo Rogue slightly under 50. Control Warrior a little bit more than slightly, but the rest pretty green. And I did face this deck even in top Legend yesterday, and in top 100 even. And it wrecked me because I was playing a slow Dungar Druid, so I guess I had it coming to me. Mulligan wise, here's what the updated stats are for going first. Really not much has changed. You want to be curving out well. Aqua Archivist is absolutely amazing. And if you have an Aqua Archivist, you could even keep things like Tainted Remnant, like Saroon, so you can tempo them out really quick. Flame Revenant is also pretty awesome. If you already have a 1-drop, Shale Spider is fine. If you already have a Curve Blazing Accretion is fine. So try to be curving out is what I'm trying to say. And on the coin, much of the same stuff. Aqua Archivist even better here, because on turn 2 you play this, and on turn 3 you get the coin Saroon, and after that everything gets spell damage, so that's absolutely insane. But the rest is kind of the same stuff, even though you're not super bothered about keeping 1-drops here. You can just coin out a 2-drop on 1 and play another one on 2, so that can also be a viable option. For other mages right now, we can also see things like Supernova Mage doing actually well, even though the sample size is quite small and the deck is kind of niche. But it is definitely something to consider. I think China loves this deck a lot. I also saw Rainbow Sith Mage here and there. Spell Mage is also up there. I think those would be the 3 archetypes you could be going for. 3 or 4, something along those lines. So you have options, but again, Elemental is probably the best, and it's definitely the cheapest, that's for sure. And on the last spot, we still have Zarimi Priest as a pretty viable option for you, even though I haven't seen too many of the Zarimis lately. The stats speak for themselves. This is a more control-y Zarimi style deck. It has things like Ceaseless Expanse, it has also an ETC in here with things like Deafen, Pendant, and even Alexstrasza, which is kind of an LTK for you on the Zarimi turn. Like, you basically reach your Zarimi turn, you slap Ceaseless Expanse, and the next turn you play Alexstrasza and push in his Thief with 15 damage, and that's exactly lethal like that. But you gotta be reaching turn 8 Zarimi, plus Ceaseless playable, and turn 9 Alex, so it does take a little bit of setup, but it's definitely pretty doable according to the stats. We also have a lot more control-y tools with things like Fly Off the Shelves, things like Hot Coals, and we also even run Love Everlasting, which is kind of interesting, but apparently it makes sense. It helps you do a lot more on this Dreamy turn as well, I guess. But the deck doesn't really have damage stats, so I don't know. I'm assuming it's gonna be a lot better playing Love Everlasting on turn 3 and then Ethereal Oracle on turn 4 and play something like a 1-mana Hot Coals or something. That could help, but I don't know. You also have plenty of cheaper spells in there, so it's kind of a weird one. So yeah, the deck is not trying to tempo a bunch of stats in the early turns as much as it used to. It doesn't have any of the overheal mechanics and whatnot. What it does have is a lot more control and a lot more burst on the Zarimi turn, I guess. So it's not exactly the same old Zarimi we've seen from the past. It has definitely evolved into something a bit more control-y. I did do a Pain Priest guide not too long ago, so you could check that one. I feel like the deck was really, really strong, but it is a little bit weirder to play, I'd say, because you're an aggro and a burn deck, so it's kind of a weird combination, but not really. It's basically any aggro deck could be a burn deck, usually. Matchup-wise, we can see again Corpse Skull Death Knight is strong, Aggro Demon Hunter very strong actually, Grunter Hunter can screw you over, and things like Psycho Rogue, Spellburst Rogue, and Weapon Rogue all are going to be really good against you, so I would not be bringing this thing at the top legend, I can tell you that much. Like, literally 50% of my matchups are Cycle or Spellburst Rogues. And also, I guess Burn Nature Shaman is also not great, but all around, again, plenty of green ones. As for the mulligan, here's what the stats are showing. You're trying to get your early game dragons, your Whelp Wrangler, Gorgonzorm was pretty neat, Orbital Halo could be awesome if you already have a 1-drop, Gold Banner's fine, Scale Replica's acceptable, and apparently even Love Everlasting could be a consideration, but I'd assume you gotta curve out into it. And on the coin, here I'd say you can keep more control-y things like Fly Off the Shelves and Hot Coals, depending on the matchup of course, but you're still trying to curve out with the good early game minions basically. For other good priest decks, we can also see things like Highlander Priest doing well here and there, even though it's not super popular. It is having some decent stats like 56% win rate, definitely nothing to scoff at. Can't see that Pain Priest I was talking about. Here's one variation of it, obviously with Kvaldir, which can be pretty interesting. Several iterations of Zarimi, all of which are running the Ceaseless nowadays, but we can also see some more early game aggression with Shadow Ascendance and such, and the overheal mechanics still. So all around those will be the free options, Pain, Zarimi, and Highlander for Priest. That's it for the top 5. Now let's check out the classes we still haven't mentioned, starting off with Death Knight. And Rainbow Death Knight actually has surprisingly big win rate with pretty good sample size. I honestly could have included this one in the top 5. But again, I do have videos about pretty much this exact same deck in it, so you can definitely check that one out. Apparently it's doing real strong. We also saw Corpse Skull Death Knight was doing strong against a lot of the popular matchups, so that should be pretty nice for you. Even Razzler Corpse Skull Death Knight apparently is doing quite well, just a single Razzler however. And in top legend, even things like Plague Death Knight worked really well, at least for me. From Diamond to Legend, it's not as amazing, and this is not the deck I used. This one still relies on some Razzler action. I think this is close to what I actually used, but not really. This one also has a lot of mining stuff, so there's that too. But yeah, Death Knight usually has plenty of different iterations that are usually working pretty well, so you can be creative about it, I guess. With Demon Hunter, Aggro Demon Hunter is still at the top of the food chain for the class. Pirate Demon Hunter is also something I've seen here and there. We have iterations for Aggro Demon Hunter with Sauna Regular, which is kind of interesting. But I guess those would be the options for Demon Hunter right now. It's either straight up aggro Demon Hunter or Pirate Demon Hunter. For Druids, we have basically 3 options. It's either Taunt Druid, Dungar Druid, or Dollhouse Druid, and I'm surprised to see Dollhouse Druid is actually having some very good stats with very good win rate. I did give you a guide about this deck not long ago, so definitely go ahead and check that one out. And personally, I find Taunt Druid to be super enjoyable to be playing. I tried Dungar Druid last night, didn't do well with it in top legend at least, but from Diamond to Legend you can still scam a lot of wins apparently. For Hunter, Secret Hunter is at the top here with not that much sample size, Grunter Hunter close second with bigger sample size, and Spell Token Hunter is a pretty enjoyable deck I find to be playing myself lately. We can also see things like Discover Starship Hunter doing well. Straight up Discover Hunter is also pretty fun, but this is again a Starship one. Last night I did try a Discover Shaper Hunter, which was really powerful, but from Diamond to Legend I'm not sure it's doing as well as it should. So again, with Hunter, plenty of different options. Moving down to Warlock, and we can see the class has definitely seen better days. Right now, things like Pain Warlock seems to be doing best, and it's kind of a weird one too. Hand Warlock is also doing acceptably well, but nothing to write home about really. And some of the Death Rattle Warlocks are still above 50%, but not by much, so honestly the class definitely has felt better before. And lastly we have Warrior here. Infinity Warrior I'd say is the best deck in top legend at least. From Diamond to Legend we can see plenty of iterations with around 55-ish% win rate, and they're all pretty annoying to play against. Some run Odin, some run Boomboss, but all of them try to control a lot and gain a lot of armor. Dummy Warrior is still playable, but it's definitely a fraction of the powerhouse it used to be. So I guess those will be the 3 options for Warrior right about now. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing for Easy Legend until the new mini set happens. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can have some Hearthstone coaching, and you can be sure I'll do my best to help you hit Easy Legend. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.